Still ahead, a special investigation. If you think an air marshal is on your flight keeping you safe, well, think again. On the 28,000 flights a day nationwide, you'll be surprised by how few air marshals are reportedly on duty. Tonight, some air marshals are speaking out, saying more needs to be done. Drew Griffin is keeping the government honest. And later, a 360 exclusive. How safe are the planes we fly on from terrorists? Drew Griffin is keeping them honest.
If there is one place Americans should feel safe after 9/11, it should be here, sitting on a commercial airplane about to land or take off at Washington's Ronald Reagan Airport. Certainly any attempt to take over the plane would be thwarted by Federal Air Marshals. But that is only if Federal Air Marshals are on board.
Training against terrorists, you're looking at Federal Air Marshals learning the lethal skills they need to keep us safe in the skies. Ever since the September 11th attacks, Washington has told us it has significantly increased the number of armed officers on commercial flights. But the government's never given out an exact number. And now, as you're about to see, several air marshals and their supporters coming forward telling us far more needs to be done to keep our flights safe. With the CNN Special Investigations Unit report, keeping them honest, here's Drew Griffin.
If there is one place Americans should feel safe after 9/11, it should be here at Washington's Ronald Reagan Airport. Certainly any attempt to take over the plane would be thwarted by Federal Air Marshals. But that is only if Federal Air Marshals are on board. CNN is being told by Air Marshals themselves that on 99 flights out of 100, they're not.
If I would say 1%, less than 1%, would I be far from the mark?
I don't think so. I think you'd be far from the mark.
These two Federal Air Marshals told us on camera what at least a dozen of their colleagues and pilots have told CNN off camera. Afraid to be identified for fear of retribution, they say the Department of Homeland Security hides behind national security laws because making the facts public would be a PR disaster.
Are the numbers classified because the numbers are embarrassing?
I would be very embarrassed by them if they were to get out.
Keeping them honest, we spoke directly with numerous air marshals. They all tell us about 1% of the 28,000 flights that take off or land in the U.S. each day are protected. One pilot who crisscrosses the U.S. and flies internationally says he hasn't seen an air marshal on board in 6 months. A federal law enforcement officer who travels to Washington every week says he can go months without seeing a marshal. And another pilot who wanted to protect his identity because he carries a weapon on flights flies in and out of New York's airports and says the marshals are almost non-existent.
Having to guess, without a doubt, it's fewer than 1% of all my flights.
The Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, runs the Air Marshal Service, which has refused an on-camera interview. Assistant Special Agent Greg Alter wrote to us that the figures we've been given are incorrect. Alter won't divulge his figures, but says, while the exact number of flights that air marshals protect is classified because we don't want terrorists to play a mathematical guessing game based on percentages, the actual number of flights that air marshals cover is thousands per day. This represents exponentially more than 1% and is well into double digits. And adds the Federal Air Marshal Service employs an intelligence-driven and risk-based approach to covering flights. Covering flights is a deliberate choice of words, we're told. Air marshals tell us the administration internally says at least 5% of flights are covered. A spokesman for the Air Marshal Service says when the service says a flight is covered, it means a Federal Air Marshal is on the plane. But the Federal Air Marshals themselves and armed pilots say that's not exactly the whole story.
It specifically told us that we're a covered flight when there's an trained armed person in the plane, then that's a covered flight.
Even if that person is not an actual air marshal, but some other kind of law enforcement officer who could even be on vacation. As for any claim 5% of flights are covered, Dave Mackett with the Airline Pilot Security Alliance just doesn't believe it.
We are not seeing anywhere near the coverage that they are asserting they have. I think they're whistling past the graveyard, hoping against hope that this house of cards that they call airline security doesn't come crashing down around them.
What's happening here? We're told federal air marshals are leaving in droves, some for better jobs, and they're not being replaced. The TSA says the number leaving has remained a constant 6.5% a year since 2001. Numerous sources are telling CNN so many federal air marshals have transferred to other jobs or left the service that staffing at field offices has nearly been cut in half. For instance, Las Vegas, which had as many as 245 federal air marshals, checked in last month with only 47. This year, the TSA is advertising to hire 50 new federal air marshals.
Drew, you know, when I first heard you were doing this story, I kind of said to myself, is this really something we should be talking about? Doesn't it encourage terrorists if they know only 1% of planes, or however many it is, only have marshals on it? But clearly the marshals you spoke to felt it was important that this information gets known publicly. Why is that if the camera ever actually finds you?
I think it's found me now. Anderson, it's very simple. The stakeholders in this, the people who are actually on these planes, these pilots, and these air marshals say they'd much rather have you and I know about this now in an embarrassing news story than to find out about it after the fact, after we learn from some catastrophic incident that the air marshals were just not there. They think that this is a national security concern that needs to be fixed. That's why they're coming forward.
Because I know you blogged about this on the 360 blog, and some people have been critical of it. I suppose it's the same as when we investigate the effectiveness of TSA screeners or port security. If no one actually challenges the government on this stuff, nothing ever changes.
That's right. And, you know, keep in mind that the government has done its own testing on TSA screeners and put that out in the public as well. We get Inspector General reports that show holes in security. They do these tests and they make them public for a reason. They try to get these agencies to move. These federal air marshals don't think they're getting heard. They want to be heard. They want you to hear this.
It's interesting. I've flown, I fly all the time. I've actually known that I've flown on 2 flights with air marshals because they come up to me afterward to say hello. So it is always a nice feeling when you realize subsequently that they have been on the flight. Drew, appreciate the report. Keeping them honest for us. Drew Griffin, thanks.